Have you ever heard about somebody who had a terrible experience doing online classes? They started their class in the summer and got way behind or completely forgot some assignments. Today, we're going to discuss online education, the pros, the cons, and make sure you stay tuned. At the end, we're going to discuss 7 steps how you can do online classes the best you've ever done them. So what's different between online classes and in-person classes? Well, you got to remember, this is a relatively new concept. Our grandparents didn't have the ability to do school online or get certificates without being somewhere in person, and this presents new challenges. It's also much more convenient depending on how you use your time. And online classes, from my experience and talking to other people, they're much easier if you've already learned how to do classes in person. So we're talking about college classes or maybe even online classes at the high school level. If you've already been in person, you probably know, hey, I need to meet this deadline. And that urgency that you learned in person and the peer pressure of a classroom works a lot better than doing classes online. But if you're like a high school senior and you're thinking about doing college and you haven't done anything in person at the college level, I would strongly advise do that first before you go to online classes. Online classes can be your best friend or they can be your worst enemy. They could be your best friend because you can work a job, get experience in the workforce while doing your education. That's a great thing. But it can be your worst enemy because online education can prevent you from taking certain steps in life. Like, say, somebody who picks up and moves to a location is very committed to then pursuing the job that degree will get them. Well, with online education, there's a little bit of a softer approach there. You don't necessarily have to uproot yourself and move to a new city. And so there's pros and cons both ways. But I did talk to a pastor who said that his wife worked full-time while he attended seminary, and that was pretty challenging because he wasn't able to have his job with his income and then, have his classes in the evenings or move his classes around his work schedule. His classes were where they were at, and they had to live off one income. That may be something that you have to do. Maybe you're not going to be a pastor, but you have to do that kind of education. That's fine, but remember, online classes present this whole new opportunity that you can learn while doing another job. Why is online education so difficult? Well, I wrote down 5 reasons that online education is more difficult than in person. The first is there's no positive peer pressure. You don't have this bell that's going to ring for you and you have to start at this time. So you have to hold yourself accountable to having time where you're going to do school and having time whenever you're done. The second thing that's different is there's a difference in communication. You're not able to start your project and then go ask your teacher questions as you're running into problems or running into issues. You have to email your teacher or use a Canvas message or Blackboard or whatever platform that your college uses. It creates a more difficult opportunity to communicate because everything's over electronic. The third reason that online is more difficult is because of scheduling challenges. You can have your days tend to run together. If you're in the middle of summer, you might forget what day it is. And whenever you are in person, your schedule tends to be much more consistent. And if you're online, you have to make that consistency for yourself. And if you don't, you can get way ahead and way behind and have sporadic experiences where you're working a ton and then you're doing a lot less. The fourth reason is that it's easier to procrastinate. Whenever you show up in person, your teacher might remind you before the class starts or right after the class ends of a project that's coming up. But an online student, you gotta pay attention because they may send you an email just to remind you, but that's not necessarily gonna happen. The fifth reason the online classes are more difficult is because it's easier to overlook assignments. Like I said, your teacher isn't there in the before and after class periods just talking and discussing with the class how things are going. They may send you an email, they may not. So you have to pay attention to what's going on. We've discussed all the challenges to online education. How are you supposed to do it? Well, begin with the end in mind. When the semester starts, you want to think, how do I want this semester to end? And as people, we don't naturally do that, but you got to force yourself. Know what the big projects are, get going on them right away. In other videos, I've mentioned start your assignments as soon as the teacher mentions it, if it's a big paper. And if it's another kind of a project, start a document. That way you have the document saved on your computer. Whenever you find some kind of information that might be applicable to your project, you can just put it in that document and you just know that you have it. So start all your documents right away. Have something that's gonna, just keep a foothold in the folder for your classes. Have a folder for every single class, by the way. And when you start with the end in mind, how do you want the semester to end? Do you want to be wrapping everything up the last week, or do you want to start fast in the semester and finish slow? I suggest the second one. Also, have a weekly schedule. So begin with the end in mind, have a weekly schedule. The thing that works really good when you're in person is that the teacher sets the schedule for you. You're forced to use the teacher's schedule. When are you going to start your classes? When are you going to finish? When is your weekend going to be? Are you going to take Fridays off? Are you going to take Saturdays off? You need to determine these things before the semester gets started. That way you have clarity. And whatever amount of time you were going to spend in person in a class, make sure you have that time scheduled, even though it's online and you don't have people holding you accountable the same way. And it's even more important that you have that schedule. The third thing that you can do to do online class as well is treat the classes like they're in person. Anything you would do for an in-person class, do it when you're online. If you were going to get up early, hit the gym before class, still do that whenever you're online. If you're going to get ready for the day, obviously you would do that whenever you're in person. Get ready for the day when you're doing online classes as well. We've discussed what online classes are and the challenges that are presented with online classes versus in person. Here are 7 practical steps you can apply to do your online classes the most successful you've ever done. Number 1, make your own classroom. Find people who are also doing online classes and ask them, when are you going to do classes? I'm going to do classes at the same time. Maybe you guys can meet up at a coffee shop and have a weekly schedule that you're going to follow, that somebody else is going to be there as well. One of the things that helps is the positive peer pressure when you're in person. See if you can do that, create that for yourself if you're doing online classes. Number 2, do not roll out of bed and start class every day. Have your morning routine. Get some exercise in, eat some breakfast, get ready for the day. Don't just start rolling out of bed, because those positive habit loops for you to go to an in-person class, you can still use those doing online classes, but you have to hold yourself to the same routine. Number 3, work based on the week, not based on the day. One thing that I have noticed is that sometimes I have more time on Monday, say, than on Tuesday. If that's the case, then I want to get ahead on Monday and not just stop when I've only got my Monday assignments done. Sometimes my Friday will be a little bit shorter than I anticipated. So work based on the week. Work on all your weekly tasks from the beginning of the week, and then if you can finish them early, great, then you can take the rest of the week off. But work based on the week, not based on the day. Number 4, have a dedicated workspace. Sometimes people will do online classes like in their bedroom, or they'll be sitting on the couch doing online classes. That's not a good idea, because your habit loops, the way that your brain works is that your bed is for sleeping. You're probably going to be more sleepy if you do online classes whenever you're just laying in your bed. Don't do that. Have a designated space where you're going to work. And like I said earlier, if you can have other people that are going to meet you there at that time, a specific time every week, do that as well. Number 5, regularly review your calendar. Classes will move so much faster if you're not paying attention to the calendar, and this is especially the case when you're doing online classes. Make sure that you keep your eye on the next 2 weeks at all times, because that's usually how much time you're going to want to work on the biggest kinds of projects, maybe more than that, but keep your eye on the 2 weeks. Number 6, stay digitally organized. If you would keep yourself organized by paper, you should keep yourself organized digitally. For me, I have a work, personal, and school file on my computer, and those are synced to a cloud storage system. If you're doing school, the big idea that you need to make sure that you apply is having a folder for every single class, and then in that folder you have your syllabus and your different assignments. But you have to stay digitally organized so you don't lose stuff and so that you do not waste your time. Number 7, here's our last tip for online classes, is break up your day. I noticed the easiest way for me to do this is look at my meals. When am I going to eat? Okay. Then either use all of my morning to do school or all of my afternoon. That's just how I do it. But break up your day. Don't just do school for like 8 hours on end. Also, you probably want to do a little more than, 1 hour a day. It depends on how many classes you're in. Break up your day. Don't do the same task all day. These tips will help you do your online classes better than ever before. Remember, the key is to make everything in your online class like it's an in-person class. And if you use these different ideas, you're going to be able to have your online classes as your best friend rather than your worst enemy. We'll see you on the next one.